Today I'm going to be demonstrating two different hacking tools, the OMG cable and the USB rubber ducky. Now both of these tools have very interesting use cases. They can both be used to execute code on a system in a matter of seconds and done very discreetly. You can see they're disguised as very common everyday objects that a user wouldn't think anything about if they were to see this plugged into their computer. One being just an average USB drive, but inside of it you can see that it's actually a miniaturized computer that is going to execute code based off of what is stored inside of this memory card here. And with the OMG cable, it's disguised as an iPhone. And it is essentially the same thing, however, it allows you to do a lot more than just execute one designated payload. Now I'm going to start with the OMG cable, and you won't be able to see it, but what I'm doing right now is I'm plugging this into my computer directly. Now, as I do this, I want you guys to pay attention to the Wi-Fi connections that are available. Because as I plug this into my machine, what you will see is a new one pops up labeled OMG, as in OMG cable. And let's just check it again. And here it is. Now, this activates as soon as you plug the OMG cable into any computer, and of course can be connected by any machines within the area. Now, I'm going to do this on my own device, but in a real scenario, what would most likely be the case is if I see you leave your computer unattended, I'll walk by and plug this in, and then I'll go sit across the room, or I'll go sit somewhere where you can't see me, and I'll connect to this with my own computer. Now, the purpose of connecting to this is so that I can log into the web UI associated with this particular OMG cable. It, of course, has a very specific password, which I've already got put in. But as it connects, what I'll then be able to do is load up that web UI so I can then start to initiate various different attacks. Okay, so we're now connected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the web UI for that OMG cable, and you can see it's all loading up here. Now, to the untrained eye, this might not look like much, but I can custom build my own payloads inside of this UI and then remotely run them on your machine. Again, being from the other side of the room, and I'm able to essentially have full control over your device because this is accessing essentially a PowerShell or a command prompt instance on your machine, and I'm able to run things without you realizing it. Now, if we go under my file menu, you can see that over here it's asking me to select a payload. Now, if I click on this, you can see that I've pre-built a lot of different payloads on this OMG cable, but I'm going to pick payload 1 and I'm going to load this. Now, I could do whatever I want with this. I can write out whatever commands I want, and what I've written here is a data exfiltration program. And it's written in a way that makes it very difficult for your average detection-based software, whether that be an antivirus or an endpoint detect and respond tool or an EDR tool, to use the acronym. It makes it very difficult for these tools to identify what this script is actually doing. Because what they typically do is they'll look at the arguments being passed through tools like PowerShell and Command Prompt to assess what it's doing and what risk that poses. But in this particular instance, you can see that a lot of the commands have been encoded. So it's just looking like a bunch of random characters, making it very difficult for anyone with a trained eye to be able to spot what this is doing, but also very difficult for an EDR tool that's looking for key strings inside of these arguments to really spot any malicious behavior. And what I'm then going to do from here is run this script. Now, before I do that, I want to pull up one of the things that we have in Threatlocker called the Real-Time Unified Audit, a very useful tool when Threatlocker is installed on a machine, because it allows you to log every action that is happening in the background on your system, or in the foreground too. So nothing's obviously happening right now because nothing's occurred since I've opened it, but if I click Build and Run, what we can see is it's actually starting to open up Command Prompt and start to type out the commands. Now, I could hide this all in the background. I wanted this to display so that you guys can see how quickly it's able to initiate these attacks. And I could even do it faster than this, but inside the script, I've built in delays so that we can slow this down and it's a little bit easier for everybody here to see. But we can see it's finished typing out the script now. And if we open up my real-time unified audit, what we can see is all of these various actions that have been triggered by this program. So we've actually got the process of PowerShell now being used to write to all of my files, because what this script is designed to do is take all of the files in my environment on my documents folder locally and my OneDrive documents folder, and then upload those to a Google Drive. And it does this so that, again, as an EDR tool inside of an environment trying to look for threats, all I'm seeing is somebody accessing their own documents and then uploading those to a Google Drive. So it can't look at the actual commands because the commands themselves are encoded. And then when it looks at the actions of the software, it's seeing things that are going to be considered legitimate. So we can bypass a lot of detection tools this way. You can see with Threatlocker in the environment, because of our ring fencing component, which is a control that you place around a process to prohibit certain behaviors that might be weaponized, like data access for this instance, or internet connectivity for another instance, we can see that it's preventing this action by default. And this is the importance of zero trust security solutions. When you take a zero trust approach to security, what that means is not just assuming everything is good until you see something bad. Because when you do that, you're leaving yourself wide open for attacks like this. It means to take away every action that is not necessary. And when you do this, you make it that much more difficult for a threat actor through any means to do harm in your systems. Because again, access to your documents folder through tools like PowerShell is possible, but completely unnecessary. No user is accessing PowerShell to do this. I think most of you users wouldn't even know PowerShell exists. But as a result of our ring fencing being in place, we've been able to prevent this attack in its steps. Now, even if it was to get a hold of these files, it would still fail trying to send that data anywhere, because one of the other options inside of our ring fencing is also to control the internet connectivity of individual processes. I'll go back to my description of what this particular script here is designed to do, and I can actually pull that up here for you guys to see. This is the actual translation for what all of that encoded text is. And you can see it's uploading it to a Google storage. Again, doing this so that it makes it much more difficult for a threat actor to identify any malicious, because it's a common URL that commonly has user data being uploaded to it. Which means from a detection standpoint, they're never going to try and stop this connection from taking place. But again, when it comes to ring fencing, it's not about whether or not the action is malicious. It is about whether or not the action was necessary. And connections to things like Google API do not fall into that category, because you've never used it to do that before, so why all of a sudden should it start doing it now? Now, this example that I've given you guys is tailored specifically to data exfiltration. But I mean, you could use an OMG cable for a number of different reasons. As I said, you can completely custom build out these payloads. So you could have it downloading and running malware in the background, again, all remotely. This is all actions that I'll trigger from my machine across the room to you, because I'm connected to the Wi-Fi signal being emitted from the iPhone cable plugged into your computer. And you would never know that it's happening because you're not thinking anything weird about an iPhone cable. And I can set all of these commands to open privately in the background so that you don't even see these actions occurring. Now, one other interesting thing you can do with this is a keylogger. Now, both the OMG cable that I'm using here and the rubber ducky that I briefly mentioned in the beginning act as keyboards when they're plugged into your computer. So no USB controls are going to stop this, because they're not USB storage devices. They are keyboards, and that's how your computer sees them. And as a result of that, with an OMG cable, I can actually capture all of your keys that you're pressing, which means if I use the OMG cable to break something on your computer and you call your IT administrator to come in and help you, and the fix that they need to implement requires administrative permissions, if I'm capturing all of the keystrokes that they're making, it means I'm capturing both their username and their password for their administrative account. And of course, with that, I can do a lot of damage. So wherever possible, to prevent things like this, it's definitely good to disable the USB ports as a whole if you can. But at the very least, you want to have things like ring fencing in place to prevent the lateral movement of the processes that these types of tools are going to weaponize. Now, I'm not going to show the rubber ducky example because it essentially does the same thing minus the web UI. A rubber ducky is designed to be left around in places where a user might find it so that they can plug it into their own computer to execute code specifically put onto that USB device or USB looking device. So it's more of a drive-by action, whereas an OMG cable is primarily used in the event that I want to do a lot more inside of your system. because I can run as many different commands as I want for as long as that cable stays plugged into your machine and as long as I stay close by you to remain connected to the Wi-Fi signal. Whereas with a rubber ducky, I'm inputting a very specific command into it, and then that command is going to be run as soon as you plug it into your computer. And I might not even just leave it there. I might walk past your machine, plug it in very quickly, and as you saw, these things type out very quickly. So I can have my entire payload executed within a matter of seconds without you realizing it. All I could do is just distract you if you're at your computer and slyly plug this in. So it's always very important to be mindful about those that are around your computer as well, especially if you do not know them, because attacks like this are very real. They might not have happened to you, but they do happen a lot. These tools exist for this reason, and only things like a zero trust security solution, whether it be Threatlocker or something else, are going to give you the best chance at stopping these types of attacks. Because when you take the processes that they're primarily basing their attacks off of, like PowerShell, like command prompt, you make it that much more difficult for them to do anything because these tools are prohibited on the access they have in their environment, if not blocked entirely. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you found it all very interesting. And if you would like to know more, please reach out.